This is Michael Osterlink. Welcome to O Radio, where we explore individual and social transformation through collaborative action. I'm a psychotherapist with a transpersonal and somatic specialization. I am also a transpartisan social entrepreneur and head instructor at Silfit's Unbeatable Mind Academy. Today's show is brought to you by Synergy Float Center, a premier flotation therapy center located in Old Town Alexandria. When you take time to slow down, amazing things can happen. Take care of yourself by booking a float, sauna, or one of the other many services. You can book online at synergyfloatcenter.com. Our guest today is JC Glick. Welcome back, JC.
Hey, how are you?
I'm great.
Good.
Let me just do a short little bio, and people should remember you because we've talked before. Lieutenant Colonel retired JC Glick is currently a partner with MVP Development Group and a partner emeritus with Kennings Associates, after transitioning from the Army of 20 years of service. His last assignment was Director of Victory College at Fort Jackson, leading the Army's Leadership Development School, Resilience School, and the military's only physical fitness school. Prior to being selected to oversee targeting and future operations for the AWG, an Army Special Missions Unit, Lieutenant Colonel Glick served as a team member, team leader, squadron operations officer, and troop commander in the AWG. Throughout his time with the unit, he had multiple deployments in support of operations in Afghanistan, Iraq, and other areas to include the Pacific and the African commands. JC is also the co-author of a book, A Light in the Darkness, Leadership Development for the Unknown, and of course, Meditations of an Army Ranger, a Warrior Philosophy for Everyone, which is what we will be talking about today. Congratulations on your new book, JC.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It was a lot of fun to write.
It's much needed, and we'll talk about why it's needed in our culture and our country today. You know, you start your book by saying, why philosophy? Why is philosophy necessary? And in your book, you have 4 different books as part of your book, and I will kind of do a little bit of a dive into each of the books. But before, why don't we actually answer that question? Why is philosophy so important, especially today in America?
You know, I don't know that chapter would have been possible without my co-author, Dr. Alice Adelana. She was really the one that kind of focused us in on that and said, look, I think, you know, there's a lot of books out there by Army Rangers and Navy SEALs and Green Berets, and, you know, this isn't that kind of book. So why are they reading this kind of book from you and from us? And when, you know, and she is just a talent when it comes to the ancients. That's her PhD is in that.
Nice.
And when you look at the Socrates, the Platos, the Marcus Aurelius, what you find is they were warriors. They experienced a part of life that very few people actually experience, and that's combat. That's true armed conflict. Which gives you a very different perspective on the world around you. You see things differently, and it may be as simple as you have a different appreciation for a beer and pizza, or it may be a very clear understanding of the reality of death. And you know, we seem to have lost that a lot in our society, and we can sit there and say, you know, it's not a negative thing that society doesn't have that across the board. It means that most of society has not had to go to war. That's nice. That's a good thing. That's a positive thing in our nation. And what that's led to, though, is a little bit of protectionism by parents. You know, some people call them helicopter parents. Some people call them snowplow parents. I call them bubble wrap parents. You know, they want to wrap their kids in bubble wrap and make sure they don't. But it's created a vacuum of education in our youth, and now actually in our teachers, where they don't understand how kind of that perspective can help develop a person. So creating a philosophy that's kind of grounded in kind of lessons learned in a decade of combat is really kind of important. And, you know, why should you listen to a guy who, you know, hasn't been successful in a whole bunch of things, but was okay at this one thing, Well, it's because he has a perspective that unfortunately or fortunately very few people have. And I think that's kind of why we started off with that chapter of just, look, here's a perspective that you just don't usually get. And unfortunately, and you know this as well as I do, in a lot of the other books out there, and I would say that, you know, the guys like Mark Devine are an exception, but most of the guys who are from my background, they don't put a philosophical stand on it. There's a little bit of chest beating and a little bit of bravado, because that's what people traditionally want to read. I don't fault them for that, but that's why like Mark's books, in my mind, are so important, is because it's such a different tact on what people are used to.
Yeah, so it's less about stories, although they play an important part. It's more about how one shows up in the world, how one sees the world, how one can operate within the world in a healthier way. I mean, this is what I'm taking from what I'm hearing you say. You know, as I mentioned, your book is divided into 4 parts, and I'm actually going to try my Latin, but correct me because I know you're going to have to. And if it's okay with you, we'll just start with book 1, Cogitare Aliter.
Yeah, close enough. I got to be honest with you, mine's not that awesome either. So I think to get it right, we'd have to make sure Alice knew what it was. So
let's have Alice listen to this and correct me. Send me back to school. In translated in English, it means think differently.
Yes.
And you lay out quite a few handfuls of things, compare and contrast. You know how one thing is compared to another thing. And if it's okay with you, what I like to do is just pick a few and talk through, kind of as a tease, because we obviously want people to read the book. You make a distinction between discipline versus obedience, as an example. Talk to us a little bit about discipline versus obedience.
That's one of my favorite ones. That's one of my favorite ones, because I think it's probably the most misunderstood and the one that gets confused the most. You know, I usually, when I talk about this, I ask folks, you know, I spent all this time in the military. And back when I came in, it was black boots, and you had to start your uniform, and you had to get a fresh haircut every day or every week. And, you know, I used to spit shine my boots and get my, you know, I had creases and the spray on starch. Every day was a new starch. And, you know, you had the, you know, high and tight every week. And I asked people, did I do that because I was disciplined, or did I do that because I was obedient? And everybody thinks I did it because I was disciplined. Mm. And that's not it. I did it because I didn't want to get in trouble. Mm. I did that because I didn't want to get yelled at for not having shined boots. I didn't want to get yelled at for not having a creased uniform. I didn't want to get yelled at for not having a fresh haircut. I did it because those were the rules. And if you didn't follow the rules, there were repercussions. Because I don't speed or I slow down when I see a cop, doesn't mean I'm disciplined. It means I need to be obedient so I don't get in trouble. And in obedience, it's about what are the consequences. It's about fear for the consequence. When I went to combat, after a couple of trips, I realized that, you know, I could be out on a long mission, you know, whether it was with the regiment or with AWG, and you know, they had rules even over in Afghanistan and Iraq. It wasn't long before we said, look, they have to be clean when they go to the chow hall, and you have to be clean shaven, and this is the uniform. And, you know, but the truth is, you know, we'd come back, and the first thing we do is we'd clean our weapons, and then we'd clean our kit, and then we would go get chow. We would be dirty. We would be unshaven. But that was the next thing. You know, we took care of our equipment. Now we had to take care of our bodies. And then you get cleaned up and rest. And did we get yelled at sometimes? We did, because there's always somebody who sits on the forward operating base who, you know, wants to kick you out of the chow hall because you're not clean enough. And in my mind, it's the difference between obedience and discipline is discipline's about doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason, regardless of the consequence. Okay. So you're going to get a consequence that may be negative to you, but if you believe it's the right thing to do, you have a responsibility. That's discipline, is doing it, even in the face of, I might get in trouble, but this is the right thing to do. Obedience is just doing what you're told to do and doing what you're supposed to do.
So when I hear you saying discipline is internally driven, obedience would be externally driven.
Absolutely. So if I decided, boy, the right way to look like a soldier is to be spit shine and starched, well, that would be my decision. And if that wasn't the rule, then that could be discipline. But discipline is making sure that, to your understanding, you're doing what's correct, even if the world doesn't think it's correct.
So it's not just subjective necessarily. You could be utilizing some kind of transcendent or moral system, which guides you towards a disciple of, a practice towards something, but it might not go with the cultural the cultural norm.
Exactly. I tell a story in my first book about Connie Kronholm, who was a young Marine lieutenant in the 50s. And he gets on a train, and a older black woman gets on, and he stands up. He's in uniform, and he stands up, and he lets this woman sit down. And the conductor comes by and yells at him because she wasn't allowed to sit in that car. And when there were white passengers, she wasn't allowed to sit down. And he said, nope, she's got to get up and you've got to sit down. Well, that was the law and that was the rule. And Connie said, nope, she's going to stay there. And a bunch of his Marines kind of stood up to the conductor. Conductor backed off. Good. But there's a perfect example of, hey, that was at the time, he was breaking the law. He was doing something that was illegal, but he believed it to be right, so he did it. That's discipline.
Nice. Okay, excellent. Another one that I want to ask you about is situational awareness versus situational understanding.
Yeah. So one of my favorite chapters, and I'm going to tell you that the story that is written in there, it was all Alice's idea, and it was a terrific example. It was much better than kind of the story that I had initially thought. She uses, Clint Eastwood, and anything that uses Clint Eastwood is awesome. But I think that, we tell people that we want them to have situational awareness. Mm-hmm. And it's really not, it's kind of a misnomer. It's not really. Situational awareness is knowing what's going on around you. And if you don't have a plan, you can know everything that's going on around you, and it doesn't matter, right? So let's take an example that's not as sexy as what's in the book, but let's take one that's really, I think a lot of people can relate to. Have anybody who's ever been in a car with a brand new driver, a young person, and that driver is probably more situationally aware of what's going on than any driver around. But we are 9 times out of 10 extremely terrified because they will literally watch somebody back up into their car because they don't know what to do.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
So they're situationally aware, but situational understanding is knowing what's going on around you and knowing what it means. Okay. Right? So, hey, that car's backing up. Let me look behind me. Do I have a car behind me? So if I need to back up, I can. Hey, can I pull forward and go to the right? What's to my right? What's to my left? And can I pull there? So having a plan, right? Tony Blauer, who we talk about it, who's the founder of Spear, who's, another one of kind of my mentors and a great friend. He talks about this and he talks about it in, I think it's either in Get Shorty or there's a scene on an elevator where a guy goes through a bunch of different fights in his head. Guy gets on an elevator and he goes through a bunch of fight sequences in his head and gets his butt kicked until he figures out the right one. None of those has happened. And then when the guy goes to hit him, he has a plan against it, right? That's situational understanding. Hey, I know 2 guys are in the elevator with me. One's in front of me, one's behind me. That's being situationally aware. And if you don't have a plan, I'm not sure what good that does for you. Knowing what is going on is good. Knowing what it means is better. So
you'll be happy to know then that I did this correctly, because actually I tasked 4 of my clients with an exercise called situational awareness, but I'm actually going to call it situational understanding because it was both being aware and then creating a plan. So for 72 hours, it was a counter surveillance exercise, just
Yeah.
for, developing awareness around themselves. So you'll be happy. I'll change my language, but I did it properly.
Yeah. So it's really cool. And I'll tell you, I don't know if you've ever heard of Mick Nicholson, General Nicholson. He was in charge of Afghanistan before the current general. But when we came into FBCB2, when we were using that kind of awareness system, that digital kind of system, when we started the Strikers, he was really the one who said, look, you can get a lot of situational awareness, but now you've got to, and that's great, you'll know a lot of stuff that's going on in the battlefield, but you've got to get situational understanding of, so what? What does all this mean? Mm-hmm. And then what's your plan against it? And I think that's where we usually, we tell athletes all the time, need you to be situationally aware. Well, if you're a safety and this receiver's running underneath you, you can sit there and know that. But unless you know, okay, I've got to jump that route, I'm not sure it does you any good.
Right on. Great explanation of that. Let's switch to a third one that's of interest. All of them are interesting to me, but we'll just go a third one for book one. It's transactional relationships versus transformational relationships. And I'd like you to talk about this, not just specific to your book, but more broadly. Because I do know that you do a lot of work with professional sports teams, as well as other people that you consult with. And I'm curious how you take this idea and then utilize it in your consulting work that you do.
This is so important. This one's really important to me because I think the world is filled with transactional relationships. It's a quid pro quo world. What can you do for me? Whether that's make me feel a certain way or, fill my pocket, or what am I getting out of us? And that unfortunately is a direction that we seem to be going in society. And certainly when right now I'm consulting with a company that has a sales force, and they're very quick to say, look, people will leave us very quickly. And I'm like, if you have transactional relationships, they absolutely will, which is why the relationship needs to be transformational. And transformational is about not what I can get out of it, but what can I give you? How do I make your life better? How do I live for something greater than myself? In even the smallest walks of life. And I'll give you an example. And this is what I believe. It doesn't mean I'm a great person. It means I just try to live what I believe. So I'm on the phone with somebody today, and I went through a drive-through. And I was talking to them, and I say, excuse me, and I addressed the person at the window. I said, okay, hey, thank you very much. I hope you have a great day. Right? And I said it not like, God bless you. I said it, I looked in the eye and I said, hey, I really hope you have a great day. Thank you so much. And I drove up, and they're like, you're so nice. And I said, no, that's the way I want to be treated. If I can make that person smile, then I've done something for that person. Right. And that's good. That's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to bring value into other people's lives as much as I can. And I think that we've continued to go down this road of, what can this do for me? And I'm not going to be nice to somebody. And if they're not nice to me, I'm not going to be nice to them. And I mean, I'm not saying be a doormat, but But I am saying, look, I don't think I should let anybody's behavior control mine. Mm-hmm. And if somebody's rude to me and I'm rude back, I have allowed their behavior to control my behavior. They have now controlled me. I don't have to be rude just because they're rude. I don't say kill them with kindness. I can be me, and I want me to be a better person. And maybe that changes their behavior, but I'm not looking for that. If that's my intent, then it's still a transactional thing. If I'm trying to manipulate their behavior with mine, then I'm really looking at quid pro quo, right? It's transactional. Transformational means I don't have anything to gain. I'm just doing it because I'm doing it, because that's who I want to be.
I appreciate the point you made that if you react to how they react to you, they have control or power over you. And I think that's really, really important. And the coaching that I do, and I have to imagine that this shows up for you too, It's teaching people to be responsive, not reactive, which is, pretty high hill to climb, because we're all, most of us, or probably a majority of us, for various reasons, are reactive at various
Absolutely.
levels for different relationships with different people at various times. But it's actually a really important skill to develop, the more transformational approach and the less reactive, more responsive way to dealing with other people. So I love that you brought that up.
Well, and look, do I get it right all the time? No. Somebody cuts me off, I still might, react in a very negative way.
Yeah.
But I try to be thoughtful of it, and when I can, I really try to make sure that what can I bring to the fight.
Well, it's also interesting too. One thing that strikes me is when you're saying this is like, we have no idea what's going on in that person's life,
Absolutely.
and they could have had the worst day ever. Like, if you would have heard their story, you'd be like, "Oh my God, I can see why you're reacting that way." And to approach them the way you're suggesting, to maybe put a smile on their face or just improve their life, even for a moment, could be the biggest gift that they have that day, or for that week, or for that month, for the full year. God knows.
Absolutely. And to have that kind of empathy,
Yeah.
because that's really what you're talking about, is abandon the story that's in your mind. The jerk, they're an ass, whatever, because they did this to me, as opposed to they did this for a host of reasons. And the way I look at it is, you know what? I don't really want to sit and hand people food all day out of a window. That's a tough job, especially when it's hot and they're working in a kitchen. Man, that's got to be tough. Why would I not want to be nice to that person? Because that's a tough job.
Nice. Good. Well, that's book one. And there's obviously other aspects to book one too, which I'm going to encourage folks to read in your new book. Let's move to book two and tease folks with that. Book two, and when I say book one, book two, book three, book four, this is one book. They're just books within the books, just we're clear on that. Book two, and hopefully your co-author correct me, because I know a bunch of this. Operate at essay, to have and to be.
Yep. And
you list a couple of qualities which are important to you in this philosophical treatise of yours. Now let's just talk about one or two of them. One is resilience.
Yeah.
And you started this conversation by talking about parents or parenting styles, helicopter parenting, which I would think we both agree can lead to children growing up into adults to be less resilient. So talk about the importance of resilience.
Oh, geez. It's funny, when we talk, so my partners, Jim Stagnita and I, when we talk to parents groups at like college recruiting events or events where we're talking to athletes, if we ask them how they became successful, they'll tell you because they failed a lot of times. And we, as a parent, I know how hard it is to see your kid fail or struggle or not, or even not even fail, but maybe not succeed to the level they wanted. They wanted an A, they got a B. They wanted to make the varsity team, they made the JV team, and it hurts us and it hurts them for a period of time, but it makes them so much stronger. And this idea that it's about celebrating, not just underwriting failure, but celebrating failure. Okay. And I got that again, I wish I had an original thought. One of these days I will, but there's this great guy named General Becker, who is, he was in DC. I'm not sure where he's off to now, but General Becker was in charge of Fort Jackson when I was a battalion commander at basic training. And we were having a battalion commander lunch, and we're talking about, how do we make things better for the soldiers? And I said, we really got to underwrite mistakes a little bit. We keep expecting these guys not to make mistakes, and they're new soldiers, and then they get afraid to try stuff, and they won't, and they don't progress because they're afraid to try new stuff. They're afraid of getting in trouble. And Becker says, JC, we got to do more than underwrite them. We got to celebrate their mistakes because it means they're trying something. And it really, once he said it, it was so clear to me. Of course, that's what we have to do. And when we deal with whether we're coaches or teachers or parents or employers, it's okay to bust somebody's chops and go, "Oh, I don't think you're going to screw that up more if you were like 3 people." But wow, That's awesome. So tell me what you learned of it, because what we don't realize is failure is still a step forward.
Yeah.
Right? I've just learned what not to do. Yep. That's a step. That's a step forward in our learning evolution. And when you see it with children, you know, I see parents, you know, 6th graders, 7th graders, and a kid will do poorly on a test. I'm not even saying fail a test, but do poorly on a test. And they like lose their mind. And the first thing I know is Princeton ain't going to look at 6th and 7th grade and say, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't do well on this 6th grade spelling test. I'm sorry, you won't be able to attend here. And what we can do is go, whoa, all right. Okay, so tell me, what did you do here? Now, if they say, hey, I didn't really study. Okay, great. Now let's talk about our studying habits. Or, hey, I thought I studied really hard. Well, let's talk about what it opens up this conversation. Now take it a step further to something that, you know, is so, I know it's near and dear to your heart as well, which is athletics and physical fitness. The only true place that we can truly, truly, truly allow kids to fail with zero consequence is on the sports field. They can fail all day long, and they get nothing but lesson from that. Because we all know that we've learned more from the times we failed and the times we've lost than the times that we succeed. Look, I failed Algebra 2 and I had to take it in summer school. I suck at every single math, but I can do the crap out of Algebra 2. I know Algebra 2, not that it has ever been used in my life, but if I ever had to, I could do it. And I just think it's about, we've got to look at failure in a very different way. We've got to look at it as it's building us. It's creating a new us. It's creating a stronger us. And that's something to be celebrated.
You know, in talking about resilience, you also, without using the terms, talked about 2 other things that are part of this chapter or this book: initiative and courage. You know, what I heard you say is that, you know, people are afraid to take the initiative because they're afraid of failure. And it takes courage to take the initiative to seek to succeed, fail to learn the lessons, and continue to moving forward. So since you've already touched on initiative and courage, how about trust?
This is one of my favorite things to talk about. And I talk about it with every group, whether it's a corporation or it's a sports team. I ask people, is trust earned or is trust given? And 99% of the time, I hear earned, because that's what we've been told. And then I ask these people, the people who tell me that it's been earned, I say, okay, when was the last time you flew? What was your pilot's name? How old were they? Did they have family? Where did they get their training? Was it in the military or in the civilian world? How many hours in that aircraft frame do they have? Have they ever had, you know, do they drink? You know, where did they graduate in their class? I mean, you know, and they go, well, I don't know any of that. They don't even know who flew them. They don't even know if it was a man or a woman. And I said, oh, so you trusted this person to go 30,000, 35,000 feet up in the air with your life, but you didn't know any of this about them. But they earned your trust by wearing a white shirt with epaulets, or, you know, and I do the same thing about, you know, you go to the ER and you're bleeding. Do you stop the doctor and go, hold on. Where'd you go to medical school?
You didn't go to Harvard? I need the Harvard doc.
Yeah. Did you know, how'd you do? And, you know what they call the last guy who graduates medical school? Doctor.
No. Okay.
So where'd you graduate in your class? You know, what was your specialty? Were you good at ER? Or are you an intern? How long have you been practicing? You don't do any of that. You say, you're wearing scrubs. Take care of me.
Yeah.
Again, trust is given. And lastly, you get out on the highway every day with tens of thousands of strangers, and you trust that they will follow the rules. And more importantly, you trust that the person that created the system had all the smarts in the world. You trust people that you've never even seen before. So if we're going to give trust to all these strangers, why would the people closest to us have to pass some imaginary bar in our head? It's very egocentric if you think about it. It's about us. Well, I'm not sure I can trust you. I'll trust all these strangers, you know, and on the simple level, right? How many people count their change, and how many people check to see if their food's been spat at, right? I mean, if we're gonna trust strangers, let's trust the people closest to us. So I think trust has to be given. And I mean, think about how great our world would be if we would just give trust. And this is what I say, because there's a lot of people are not comfortable with this. And I say, here's the one guarantee I'll make. You trust everybody, I promise it's going to happen. Somebody's going to violate your trust. And the trick is, the difference between good leaders and great leaders is good leaders create a policy or system to make sure that no one can violate their trust in that way again. Okay. Great leaders make sure that person can't violate their trust that way again. But another person could absolutely do it, because I can't judge everybody's actions by one person's actions. And that's important.
Yeah, that's a great segue to book 3. Ducatus on leadership, and you've already started talking about leadership. So why don't I just throw out a couple of the sections that are in there and get your feedback. Characteristics of a good leader.
Look, I think it's simple. I mean, there'll be huge lists and there'll be tons of discourse on what makes a great leader. I think there's 4 things that are essential. I think it's humility, okay, loyalty, curiosity, and empathy. And you know, you can be a leader without those 4 things. I just don't think you're a good leader without those 4 things. But I think if you have those 4 things alone and no other things that a million people would tell you have to have, you know, integrity and this and that, if you have those 4 things, I think you'll be a great leader.
Who either in your life or in your study lives up to those, at least those 4 characteristics of a good leader?
The great news is almost every leader I worked for lives up to those. You know, from my 1st battalion commander, a guy named Tom Snookus, Mike Ferreter, Stan McChrystal, Dan Allen, Mick Nicholson, all these guys, I just, you know, and the NCOs, right? Mike Hall, Greg Birch, Ray Devins. I mean, they're the guys that taught me. I mean, they had all 4 of those. One of the things that I think we're missing in our leadership at a national level, and I don't care what side of the fence you're on, you have a hard time finding people in politics today that have any one of those 4, let alone all of those 4. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I think it's an unfortunate piece, but I really think that there's so many guys and girls who had it that I got to watch and be part of. And, you know, I think even of Chris Greca, just guys who I got to watch on a daily basis, either from being next to them or working for them and saying, holy cow, man, that's what right looks like. And each of them had their own little foibles, but they had those 4 things down pat.
Are those taught? People born with those capacities? Like, where do you think they come from?
You know, that's a great question. One of the things about, you know, when I was coming up with this list, the one thing that I realized is all 4 of those things are taught. They have to be taught to you, right? Empathy is taught. You might have a little proclivity to be empathetic, but you have to learn how to be empathetic. Curiosity, we're all born with it, but to truly be curious, you have to be taught. Loyalty is absolutely taught. And humility is not only is it have to be taught, but it has to be reinforced on a regular basis. So the good news is they're all taught, and they can be taught as a young person. They can be taught as an adolescent. They can be taught as an adult. And why that's good news is that means anybody can be a great leader. You can be taught to be a great leader. It's not some sort of, you need to be an extrovert, you need to be an introvert, you need to be no, all those 4 things, that's not in your DNA. Those are all taught. And that means we can teach anybody to be a great leader. And maybe some people it comes easier than others. But I think, you know, humility for one is one that I've always struggled with. And it's not because it's a, hey, look at me kind of humility. It's not the Christian Judeo kind of idea of humility. It's the idea that just because I think it needs to be done this way, if you think it needs to be done another way and we still get to the same point, yeah, let's do it your way. That's the humility. I'm not talking about the, aw, shucks, I'm not good at that. No, it's the, hey, let's go your way, and being okay with that and being totally comfortable, making it about somebody else's plan. I just think that, it's something that we can always work on, and it's something that can be taught. And, it gives me hope that we can really create great leaders.
One of the challenges I see with your definition of humility, not the Judeo-Christian one, is, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, kind of the reactive mind. How do you teach people to loosen up on their grip on how they think things should be? Because people will fight to the death, literally, and sometimes figuratively, to holding on to their vision of the world. How do you teach people to loosen up on that and take in other people's perspectives and recognize that perspective could take that perspective with a plan could take us to the same place where my perspective, my plan could take us? I mean, it's not an easy place to get to for a lot of people.
It's really hard. And some of the best stuff I've read about this is from a guy named Barry Gentz. Gentz, Jentz. He wrote a book called Talk Sense, Sense. He teaches kind of balcony conversations at Harvard, and absolutely just one of the few geniuses I've probably ever met. And he says that people operate in three boxes, basically, as a generalization: the truth, my truth, and my sense of the truth. Have you ever heard this?
I have not. This is interesting.
It's pretty cool. So the truth is, you have two pitchers of water, a right pitcher and a wrong pitcher, a yes pitcher and a no pitcher, right? It's either right or it's wrong. It's yes or it's no. This is the way it is. I got to come up with a different example, but I always use people that are devout in their religion and say, this is it. There is no other religion. This is the only thing. This is what's right. Then there's my truth. And my truth is, here's my yes pitcher and here's my no pitcher, or here's my right pitcher and here's my wrong pitcher. I know there's other pitchers out there. There's other pitchers of water out there, and that's fine for those people. But this is mine, because this is what's really right. Right? So again, I might look at this as certain religious sects that maybe say, well, homosexuality, I know it's out there. I know people do it. It's wrong. But, I know it's out there. Well, that's over here, the truth people, oh, it's evil, it's wrong, it shouldn't exist. These people go, hey, I know it's out there. It's just not right. My two pictures. And then there's my sense of the truth. And my sense of the truth says, these are my two pictures. But I know there's an infinite number of pictures out there, and they might have something that I don't know in them, and I might change my picture for that picture. And I go, oh, I didn't know that. Let me grab that one. That's a better picture for me. And it's funny because 90% of the time we exist in the truth or my truth, right? The guy who cuts you off is an idiot. The woman that cheats on you, she's a bad person. There's a whole bunch of truths in our mind. But leaders need to learn to get into my sense of the truth of, okay, I think it's this way, but hold on. Maybe there's information I don't know. Maybe maybe there's something this person knows that I never thought of. So I've got to suspend my own beliefs for a second. And it ties into this other piece, which is, and I'm sure you talk about unconscious bias with some of your clients. And we've been led to believe that unconscious bias is like a horrible thing. And I don't think it is. It's kept us alive for a long time. It's kept humans surviving. What's bad is if we go with it, right? But so that initial reaction of, ooh, this doesn't look right. I'm not sure I like this. This is kind of wrong. And then being able to take that from our lizard brain, that's a good thing. It said, oh, something's up here. And then put it into our prefrontal cortex and say, okay, let me think about this. What don't I know? is this really something to be afraid of? Is it something that maybe I should listen to somebody else on? And so those two things together, getting to the, oh, I know they're wrong. Wait a second. I'm saying that because that's my lizard brain talking. Let me bring it up here and go, what don't I know? There might be something I don't know. And we have to be thoughtful about that, right? So I'm probably not talking to a 13-year-old about, what it's like in Afghanistan based on his opinion and go, I wonder if this 13-year-old knows something I don't. I'm probably not going to do that. That's just not, maybe if I got nothing else to do. But 9 times out of 10, if I'm in a work environment, and if I'm in a team environment, I'm going to go, I really believe it's this way. Everything's telling me it's this way, but maybe I missed something. And that's that humility piece that we just got to, we've got to recognize when we start, kind of planting stakes in the ground and go, all right, I'm doing it. Let me see. Let me hold off. Maybe this isn't the right thing to plant stakes on.
I think you'll appreciate this. In our program, I have to look up. I'm very interested in Benny's work. But we talk about perspective taking, and that any one person has a limited but partial truth, because we're not God or gods. We just don't know everything. And we have a particular perspective, and through meditation, you develop the witness. You can start seeing your own perspectives, create some distance between you and your perspective. You can start playing around with it and create the space in your own body, mind to hear other people's perspectives as well. And it's a really important part of leadership, as you're suggesting, especially in our globalized, multicultural world. If you can't suspend you can't loosen up your grip on how you think reality is, you're not going to be able to relate to other people. You're not going to be able to lead them. You're not going to be able to understand them to lead them, or be led by them if you're in a subordinate position. So it's wonderful that you've included that in your book.
Well, and I get to talk about those. I've been very fortunate to work with law enforcement a bunch of times to talk about, having empathy for the people that the community that you're serving, and having humility. Just because you have a badge and a gun, you really got to think about what it's like for that 14-year-old kid who's got to pass some really bad actors every day. And, oh, by the way, it might make his life a little bit easier if he deals in a positive way with those bad actors. And maybe you can think about that before you, harass a 14-year-old kid, regardless of race, religion, color, creed. Just have some empathy of what somebody else is going through.
Right on. Yeah, no, I love the fact that empathy is such an important part of your work. And it's definitely missing in our world. And I think we tend to be quite much more narcissistic and less empathetic of other people around us. Let's switch to book 4, and I'm definitely not going to try to pronounce the Latin. It's elite. So people listening or watching go, oh, I know what elite in Latin is. 2 things that I want you to talk about. First one is earn it every day. Why is that important?
So I think a lot of times we get to a place where we feel like, okay, I've reached the pinnacle. And I see this with CEOs, right? They get to the pinnacle and then they operate steady, they stagnate. They stay where they are because if we screw up, I might lose this great comfort, this great ability that I have, right? So this comes from kind of a really neat story about General McChrystal. We were not doing so well in Iraq for a little while. We were hitting a lot of dry holes, right? So we were trying to get a target, and we hit the target, and the person we were looking for wasn't there. And it was a joint task force with great sailors, great airmen, and other great Army brethren. And so McChrystal brought us in, and this is actually part of another chapter called The Best versus the Best Available. But he brought us in, and McChrystal said, hey guys, you're not the best. You're the best available. And as much as we think that that's about kind of putting us in our place, like you're not as great as you think you are, that was not his intent at all, because he was talking to the best warriors in the United States military. What he did was he gave us the freedom to fail. He gave us the freedom to try new stuff, to continue to earn our right to be there, to look at the guys right and left and not worry about making a mistake, but to continue to prove that we belong there. Not by doing the same thing over and over, but by innovating and failing and trying something and learning from that and then moving forward. And this idea of being, part of something is about making it better, making it better every time you touch it, and not just being happy. My daughter played college lacrosse. My son plays college football. My youngest son, he's still and he just started in high school. But we've always talked, and they've always talked about, I don't want to just be on the team. I want to be on a team that wants to win, that wants to win a national championship. That's what I want to be a part of. I want everybody who's not just there going through the motions, but they're there to make the team better, to make everyone around them better, and they're earning their right to be there every day. And I think we can look at that as a negative because, hey, what have you done to earn your right to be here today? I don't think it's about anybody else asking you that. I think it's about you asking yourself that. Have I earned my right to be there? Because your best and my best aren't going to look the same. But as long as you're giving your best, then you've earned your right to be there. It's not for me to question that you have. It's for you to question, have I earned my right to be here? Have I made those around me better? Have I made my organization better? And I just think that's such a staple in special operations.
Listening to you talk is fascinating because I see how all the different books are interconnected, and they build, the different qualities build upon each other to create a kind of integrated whole of how one should proceed in their life. Very much appreciated. Just want people to take a look at the book and encourage them to definitely pick it up. Now, how can people find your book? How can people find about your work? I know you're on social media. How can people find you there as well?
Well, I took a little break from social media. My son and I, we thought it was depressing. I read Twitter and I get very depressed. But I just recently got back on because exciting announcement. My book has been available on Amazon now since January. But now there will be its own site. I'm going to be putting out an advertisement within the next today or tomorrow. We have a new publisher, Hatteras Publishing, Printing, where you can get the book through them. You can order it direct from both books, actually, Light in the Darkness and now this Meditations of an Army Ranger. So Sarah New is the co-author of the first book and Alice, the co-author of the second book. But we have this website now where you can actually contact any one of us and you'll be able to order the book direct. So if you're not an Amazon person, you don't have to get it on Amazon. I'm on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, usually in some form of JC Glick. And I really like to hear from people who have questions. I always have time for somebody who's kind of interested in talking about this stuff. As you can tell, I tend to get a little bit verbose when it comes to this stuff, but I get excited about this because I just think we need to talk about this more in today's society. Because if you read Twitter, if you listen to the news, you would think that we're going in an absolutely horrible direction. Again, regardless on which side you're on. If you're way to the left, you think we're going way too far to the right. If you're way on the right, you think we're going way too far to the left. And I believe that most of us are pretty much in the center. And if we focus on making sure other people's lives are better, I think we can do a pretty good job. And I think most people want to. I think everybody kind of wakes up thinking, I'm a good person. I don't think people think they're bad. So I really like these. So if anybody wants to get a hold of me and just to talk, I'm more than happy to do that.
And it's important for folks to know you're not just an author, you're a consultant. So if people also want to hire you to come into their corporations or work with their sports teams, they can also contact you the same way.
Absolutely. So it's so our business site is mvpdevelopmentgroup.com. And there's contact us on there. but you can either reach me or Jim Stagnita, who's a 30-year professional and collegiate lacrosse coach who is absolutely just so talented at what he does and bringing and understanding how teams work together. And I think having that military background and having sports background and combining it together has been a lot of fun for us.
Awesome. Well, JC, it's a great conversation. Let me definitely encourage folks to check out your book.
Well, and thank you. It's been an honor. I mean, I'm humbled to be on this, and I'm humbled to be your friend. So thank you so much.
Same. Great to see you, and definitely encourage folks to check out the book. And if they're looking to hire you, to go to those 2 different websites. If they want to talk to you, ask questions about the book, either one of the books, they can do so on your personal website. If they want to hire you as a corporate or sports consultant, they can go to your professional website. And we'll make sure to have all that in the show notes to make it easier for folks to click. And we'll see you soon.
All right. Hey, thanks very much.
Bye, buddy. Take care.